Good morning, Sean. John Worrell here.
How you doing, John?
Hope you're hope you're dealing well with all the snow.
Yeah, hope you are too.
Well, it took some digging, but does it seem fitting or perhaps inevitable that it's Bills and Chiefs once again in the playoffs for a second year?
Well, it's two good teams, so I think from that standpoint, yes, and we have a lot of respect for them. Obviously, they beat us, knocked us out last year, and I think they won 5 consecutive playoff games at home in Arrowhead Stadium there. So it'll be a big challenge for us.
And just can you reflect back and remember what it was like in some of the criticism that the team took for trading that pick that wound up being Patrick Mahomes, and then yet having the good fortune to land a guy like Josh Allen, and what Josh has done, over the course of his short career so far.
Yeah, I just think, we're happy with the quarterback we have, and I'm sure they're happy with Pat there, and I think it's worked out for both, and able to get a player like Trey as well, and amongst others. So, so I think it's a good deal for us, and that's where we're at.
Good. Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean. Good to see you. Can you reflect back on the AFC Championship game last year when, everyone saw that picture of Stefon on the field watching all of the celebrations, and now here we are a year later and you guys are going in there again, not for the title game, but, in the postseason once again?
Yeah. Those are tough moments, right? And losing overall is tough, in particular in the playoffs. And, you're just trying to be supportive of a teammate, be supportive of one another. And I know what it means to these players and to the staff. I mean, it means a lot to people in our building here to go out and perform at a high level. And so that's really, without getting too wordy, Heather, was just trying to support and love, show love for another teammate, really. And
then when you look at what the Chiefs have been able to do this season, obviously they got out to a rocky start, but having a lot of success lately, especially you saw what they did last night to the Steelers. How different is this Chiefs team from maybe when you guys faced them in week 5?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the game last night, very, very impressive performance against a good football team, and a well-coached team with Mike Tomlin. So, like I said earlier to John's question, we'll have our work cut out for us, in particular out there.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Sean, Adam Benini. If I could just kind of follow up on that a little bit more specifically in terms of what they're doing. Have they, I know dialed it back is probably the wrong term in terms of what they're doing offensively, but a little bit more conservative, moving the chains, that type of a thing, as opposed to taking the big shots? I mean, what are you seeing from them from an offensive standpoint that's maybe different than what was the case early in the year?
Yeah, I mean, very creative under Andy and Eric Bieniemy there, and they've just got so many weapons that they're a challenge to stop. They try and go down the field and they try and hit you underneath, and the RPO game, and so they do a lot of good things offensively to keep you off balance.
And just to follow up on when I asked you Saturday night about complimentary football and the way you guys are playing, you were quick to point out, and I think we probably expected this a little bit, that there were still some things to clean up, despite how incredible in a lot of ways and historic that performance was. What have you seen from your team in terms of looking at the film in that regard, and how well do you think you're playing on both sides of the ball right now heading into this?
Yeah, I think really, Adam, we're focused on this week. And getting back to basics, getting back to fundamentals, getting our focus back where it needs to be. And I know a lot of the players were in over the last day or two here to get their treatment and get their workouts in. So in the midst of this weather we're having outside, right? So that's really what we're focused on right now.
All right, Sean. Thanks.
You got it.
Hey, Sean, it's Jackson, Rochester. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. I mean, you know, obviously any playoff game is exciting. It's great to be in it, but you know, do you sense your team maybe has, and it might be a little early for this question because you know we just started the week. You sense maybe there's a little extra excitement to go back to KC and have a rematch with same team that you had last year in a do or die situation?
You know, I just think it's a respect for them. You know, they're the defending AFC champs, and it's tough to play them anywhere, let alone at their place. And so we've got to put in a good week of practice and get ourselves ready to go to perform at our best.
Okay. Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, it's Kim Jones. How are you?
Good, Kim. How are you?
I'm good. I have all good intentions with this question, and it's a couple of years in the making. So I'm excited to ask you about this. I talked to Cale Sanderson the other night, and it was about the time that you stopped in to the Penn State wrestling room. And first of all, he said his wrestlers were so excited you were there. He said it was like they were all trying out for the Bills that day. But when you were there, I know they were playing dodgeball, as Cale often has his team do. And I just wonder, from that whole day or the hours that you spent there, Sean, did you take anything coach to coach? And I know Cale has a great deal of respect for you because he told me so, but do you take anything coach to coach in terms of something subtle that maybe you do with the Bills now that you could reflect back, you know, having seen that day?
Yeah, Kim, I appreciate you asking that question. Yeah, I have a ton of respect for Cale. I mean, you look at not only his personal wrestling career and what he was able to accomplish, but what he's been able to accomplish in the next chapter of his life and his career. Just such a class guy, off the mat, on the mat, how he handles things within that program. You know, just the culture he's built. And this is one of, if not the top programs. You know, you look at the amount of national championships they've won. And I think that speaks for itself, but also more importantly, how they've done it, not just the what they've done, but how they've done it. And so I just spent some time, Terry set it up, and I was able to spend some time with Cale and his staff, and then just observe more than anything, and a practice, and fascinating to watch the best of the best and how they do it, the habits they have, the environment around practice, the environment around the program.
So Sean, you know, if you didn't take anything specific that you implemented with your program, was there any sort of a like lightening things up on a Friday perhaps? Because Cale said his goal during that week, which was Nationals week, you know, he didn't want to put extra pressure on athletes who already are feeling pressure, essentially.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it was that part was kind of just what's the word I'm looking for? Like, is this really what happens? Is this the top program in America, and they're playing dodgeball the day or two before they leave for nationals? And I think it's just really how an elite coach prepares his team for all parts of getting his players, his wrestlers in this case, to perform at their best, and in mind, body, and spirit, right? Not just the body, but also the physiological part of the approach and what goes into it.
Sean, thank you so much for indulging me, and I love the answers. And Cale's a big fan of yours. I know that. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Kim. Appreciate that.
Coach Mookie Hawkins, Buffalo Sports Cincinnati. How you doing today?
Good, Mookie. How are you?
I'm doing great, Coach. I'm doing great. You know, I know you played the game. So when Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas led the charge, how much did that get you and your team juiced up?
Yeah, that was awesome. They did a great job, and I mean, I think that's becoming such a tradition for us before home games. It just gets the fans fired up and lights a good fire for the entire stadium there.
Absolutely, man. And speaking of some things that y'all been doing quite well, the past 2 years, you guys have been heading into the playoffs relatively healthy. So how important has load management been over the past couple of years, Coach?
Yeah, Mookie. So we try and do our best to take care of the players, but also have them ready to go. And it's a delicate balance to find that line between not prepared and rested and over prepared and tired. So we just try and find that. And we have a great staff. I've got a great staff around me with sports science, strength and conditioning, and our medical team that do a phenomenal job of helping me with that.
One more, if I may, Coach. Dr. King, how important has his legacy been?
He's a trailblazer in what he's done and how he's done it. And, the leadership that he exhibited, just incredible. How he led by example more than anything from what I can tell, and the path that he blazed.
Absolutely, Coach. Have a great week of practice.
You too.
Hey, Sean, Mike Catalana. The Cowboys game, the way it ended, I know you're busy, but a lot of people are obviously talking about it. I was curious about those type of circumstances. I know you practice circumstances for games, but how often do you do that? And is that, since probably most of your players saw it, is that a teachable moment? Do you go over things like that now leading into such an important game?
Yeah, we try and grab as much of that as we can on a week-to-week basis. There's sometimes only so much time that I'll have in front of the team to share everything without overloading them. So we try and definitely take the boulders of some of the things that happened this past weekend, and those are tough situations, and it takes a lot in those situations. There's a lot going on in those situations, and so we always try and learn from everything that's going on in our game we take from, but also other games around.
And I know we've asked you a ton of questions about Andy, but you guys have gone up against each other, I think 5 times since you've been coach. It'll be 4 in the last 2 years. Was there a moment as a coach that you consciously thought about being a head coach and going against him? Maybe that wasn't until you were a coordinator. Maybe it was when you were an intern. Like, I don't know when it was. Was there a moment?
When I thought about
against him as a head coach, and going up against him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think really, Mike, just going through the process of a position coach to a defensive coordinator, you're so focused on the task and the job in front of you that until you become a head coach, and then once you become a head coach, you really, at least I do, I look at you take them one season at a time, and not a fancy answer here for you, but you just take the next team on the schedule, and that's where we've been. But to your question, I think it's a testament to both organizations that we've played quite a bit in the last couple of years in particular, and that usually is a good thing, especially when you're talking about going up against Andy in terms of his teams are usually at or near the top of the league.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Sean, do you have an update on Mario Addison, and did anyone else come out of the game with anything?
Yeah, Mario is day-to-day at this point, so we'll just see where that leads us through the week here, Kathy.
And that was the shoulder, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then I know you mentioned Tommy Doyle post-game, how that touchdown is kind of just a byproduct of when a team's rolling like that, but what else have you seen out of him this year?
Yeah, another young player, and love the way he approaches his job on a daily basis. He comes in, he works, doesn't say all that much, and very professional in his approach, even for a young player. Seems to take the mindset of earning his right to play, earning his right to be on this team, and I think that's a healthy mindset and the right mindset, quite honestly, for a young player.
When you mentioned so quickly he doesn't say much, has it increased at all since like training camp, or is it kind of been the same all year?
I think a little bit here. Most of the rookies don't say much in training camp because everything's so new. Some talk more than others, but for the most part, most of them learn to, I think, listen first and watch, and then they grow into their their personality, their real personality throughout the course of the season. And that's where our development team does such a great job with educating those young players on how to do things, especially early in the year.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep.
Hey, Sean, how are you?
Hi, Matt. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Sorry about the little video snafu. I don't know if you caught it yet, and it's made some viral headlines, but Ryan Fitzpatrick, current Washington football team quarterback, was in the stands watching the Buffalo Bills play the New England Patriots and took his shirt off, and it was a wild scene. Obviously, Eric Wood is very close to him. I'm wondering your reaction to it, and maybe if you talked to Ron Rivera at all about it.
Yeah. No, I haven't spoken with Ron about it, but I did see the picture, and from what I know of Fitz, it's fitting, and really appreciate his support. And from what I understand, some of his family was with him as well, and I think that's just awesome for a guy that's been here and to come back and support the organization like that and be a part of the environment. I think that's pretty cool.
Cool. And were there any other injury updates besides Mario that came out of the game?
No.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sean.
Yep.
Hi, Sean. It's Jay with the Buffalo News. We know that Leslie and Brian are kind of involved in some interviews that are going on around the league right now. What do you do from an organizational perspective to try to assist those guys as much as possible while also keeping the task at hand, or, focused on the task at hand, knowing that you've got such a big game coming up? How do you guys handle that?
Yeah. The way things work is we've tried to organize it so that it's efficient for us on our end. And then those two, in terms of Brian and Leslie's prep for the game, so that they can focus. They did some of that yesterday. Excuse me, and now they're on to focus back on the Chiefs here. So, and that's really what being a professional is all about. Is you got to be able to compartmentalize some of that stuff.
I know that last year the Bills had implemented or introduced, I think, a potential rule change to avoid these situations until after the Super Bowl. It didn't come to pass, so the franchise is still dealing with it. Do you consider it to be a distraction at all, or is it just part of life in the NFL that you have to kind of get through, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, having gone through it somewhat myself, I think it is just one of those things you're going to have to, like I said, be a professional about it and be smart with your time, efficient with your time. Most of the prep for things like that happens in the off season. That's when you should be prepping anyway, at least the bulk of it, Jay. And so now it's about maybe fine tuning it at best. But the reality of it is, if you haven't been preparing, you're probably not going to do all that you want to do in that interview. But the focus, as you said, needs to be on our game this week and on the Chiefs at this point.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean. Have a good week.
Yep, you too.
Hi, Sean. I know that you talk to your dad a lot, sometime every day, maybe, and whether it's on the phone or in person. What was the latest conversation like? I know it had to be pretty emotional, especially growing up the son of a coach.
Yeah. My mom and dad, they're very supportive. I talk to them as much as I can. They know during the season that I'm on this kind of routine, and sometimes we set a time to talk during the week, later in the week in particular, but they're so supportive. I mean, my brother and I and our families, that, there's nothing more I could have ever asked for as a son. And they just give us all the support we need. And they're a big part of why my brother and I are in the positions we're in. And it's because of the way we were raised. So it was nice. They came up for the game this past week. It was great to have them here. And, emotional from a standpoint of just wanting to do well with them here and for them to watch us win a home playoff game, because they couldn't last year. So.
Yeah. And when you went to the Penn State wrestling room, did you feel the urge, or were you offered the opportunity to roll with some of those guys?
I was never given the opportunity, come to think of it, Nick. I'm not sure I would have fared all that all that well, though. I may not have made it out alive, to be honest with you. Those guys are awfully good there. So it was nice just to sit back and watch, and the level of wrestling was at an all-time high.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, Vahe Gregorian from the Kansas City Star here. Good to see you. Thank you.
Sure.
I hope you can indulge a little bit of nostalgia just for a moment. I'm curious how much you and Brett Veach have some kind of kinship through having had the Andy personal assistant role, if that has continued through the years. If you guys know each other in a certain way because of that?
Yeah, I would say that most of us that were in that position with Andy specifically, or that have occupied that role around the league, have a little bit of a common bond because it's a unique position. But a position that you're fortunate to have when you're in it, and because of what you have a front row seat to be able to learn around a coach and a man like Andy Reid.
And, beyond that a little bit too, I know this would be hard to summarize, and it probably is a funny week to ask you this, but are there 2, 3, 4 things that you think of specifically that came out of your time with Andy as part of your own makeup that you would point to?
Yeah, there's probably more than that. But just to name a few, I think for your story is, the level of organization that Andy had and displayed every day, and having a plan is one thing. Having a vision, I guess, is one thing, but Andy had a day-to-day plan of how he wanted to accomplish that vision, and yet he was very consistent. And I was very young when I started there, so I kind of grew up around Andy in that way, and so he just does a great job of leading in that regard.
And last thing is just this, there was a long time, Andy was around quite a while before he won a Super Bowl. Did you have a sense that, I don't know if it was inevitable, but that would come for him based on what you'd seen, that it's just a matter of breaking through? And I'm sure that's a relatable point to you right now too.
Right. Yeah. I just knew I had such respect for Andy, and still do, that when we went up and kind of, went to those NFC championship games, but couldn't break through, I think, for a couple of years there. And you just knew how good of a coach Andy was. So it was only a matter of time. And, I was so happy to see that come to fruition, that obviously we broke through there in 2004, I believe it was. But then when he got to Kansas City, breaking through again and winning it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, good afternoon. Herbie Teope here with the Kansas City Star, and echoing what some of my colleagues here in KC are saying, thank you for talking to us.
Sure.
Tyreek Hill has had to sort of reinvent himself this year. He's no longer considered the deep threat. He's had to adjust to more underneath routes based on what the Chiefs have faced this year. And putting on your former defensive coordinator hat, how impressive is it that he is able to do that? And how much more dangerous is he to prepare for, since he's no longer considered just a deep threat?
I would say his level of threat is, to me, just the same. He's one, if not the best, receiver. When you look at what he's been able, he's arguably one of the top receivers in the league, right? And he gets deep. He does it underneath with the run after catch throws and the screens and everything, and the reverses. And he's extremely dangerous just when he steps on that field.
You mentioned, Andy Reid's reputation for being so well organized and detail oriented. One of the guys on your coaching staff right now, Chad Hall, played for the Chiefs as well. How much has he taken that as well under you over there?
Yeah, Chad's a young coach that's off to a good start. So, I know he's going to continue to learn and grow. That's really, when you're a young coach like that, that's really what you got to do, Andy always encouraged all of us to be a sponge and take notes and work your tail off and and that's what you try and do.
Thank you, Coach.
Sure.
Coach Matt Derrick with Chiefs Digest, and echoing Herbie, we truly appreciate your time here in KC. I know you get asked a lot about Andy, but you spent a lot of time with Steve Spagnuolo as well there, and you were kind of the young guy in the staff, and I'm sure Spags will appreciate me pointing out he's the older guy. But what kind of relationship you have with Steve, both back then and now?
Yeah, extremely close. I would consider it extremely close. Just what he taught me, what I learned from him, the amount of time he spent with me when he really didn't need to do that. Extremely gracious person, both Steve and his wife as well, and great people. Just the way, I guess, his path being he was the assistant secondary coach and safeties coach, and then he and I teamed up together, and he was the secondary coach and I was his assistant. And before that, I was the quality control coach, which he was doing some of that when I first got to Philadelphia there under Andy. And again, just so gracious. And I kind of look up to him from a bigger brother standpoint, although I have a brother myself. Just the way he has helped me over the years, even coming into the head coaching position. And I remember Spags sent me a book that I still have to this day about leadership. And so I can't say enough about it.
When you look at his defenses and the concepts that he uses, what kind of similarities? I mean, do you see, you're both coming from the Jim Johnson tree, but I know you've both kind of taken your own routes.
Yeah. Like you said, I think we've taken our own routes. All the coaches that were under Andy and under Jim on that defensive side in particular, with Ron Rivera, Leslie Frazier, Spags, we've all kind of gone and off and done our own thing. And yet there's a lot of the core of what Jim had in his system, but then there's some additions that have been made to it and tweaks and whatnot, just to more than anything, probably stay current with the game.
And you mentioned Steve's wife. Does that mean you've had Maria's meatballs?
She's a great cook. And just the thing I love about both of them is that everyone is family to them. So I can't say enough about the two of them.
Thanks, Coach.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, it's Adam Teicher at ESPN. Are
Hi,
there
Adam.
things, hey, Sean, are there things you've taken from Andy and maybe incorporated them into your own coaching style? And I'm not so much talking about X's and O's here, but more management type things.
Sure. I mean, one of the things Andy taught me, Adam, was to take a ton of notes. And I remember I went into Andy's office one time and I didn't have a piece of notebook paper and a pen to write something down with. And that was the last time I can tell you that I've showed up in Andy's office without a paper and a pen. So with that, I would see notebooks upon notebooks on Andy's shelves related to football, X's and O's, but also other areas of leadership as well. And so that's one of the greatest lessons I think I learned, was just to prepare, even though you're in another job, work your butt off to prepare like crazy for your opportunity, because you only get one chance.
Yeah, that's a great story. And you mentioned a minute ago, you learned a lot from his level of organization. Can you have any other examples you can pass along about that?
About his level of organization?
Yeah.
I mean, you name it. Andy had it like scheduling. I mean, he kept all the old itineraries in a notebook, and so it just had an incredible database of information from his time, that I can remember even, but I'm sure there's others going back even earlier to his time at BYU. I mean, he just does such a great job of learning. I remember and he holds, he had great mentors in his career, right? With Lavelle Edwards and John Madden. I know they were all tight, and that's the same. I hold Andy in the same regard because of what he's taught me and how he's modeled things he's modeled on the field, off the field, and then the way he's become such an ambassador for the NFL.
Right. Great stuff, Sean. Thanks, and good luck Sunday.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
Hey, Sean, Alex Brasky with the Batavia Daily News. A couple of slip-ups in the kicking game last week. Are there any ongoing concerns in that regard heading into this week? Game against the Chiefs might come down to a final kick.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's always, you're playing, two good teams here, and so we have to prepare with that in mind, and full confidence in our kicking game and what we're doing there. And I know those guys are Heath and Matt Smiley, and those guys on that side of the ball. A couple of plays we want back, but overall very confident in that group. They've had a real good year.
And you try to manage emotions, at least do your best to, as a coach throughout the season, with not looking too far ahead or not building up a certain game bigger than another. What do you do this week against this team in this spot to kind of quell those emotions with your players? We all know how emotional of a team, and especially at the quarterback position that you guys can have.
Yeah, I just think, we got to get back to basics. We've got to get back, our focus here and have a good week of preparation. Consistency will be big. And that's really where you got to hit the reset button and start it all over again. And that's what playoff football is all about.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Okay. You got it.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Thanks, Caleb.